Hello, everyone, and welcome, and thanks for joining us on another episode of the WealthTech Insider. I'm Danni Le Grande, and today I'm super excited to be joined by Mel Drago from Tanngo. Mel Drago has a couple of businesses, Tanngo and Tempe, which are paraplanning and back office staffing solutions. Tanngo is also a simple and secure online workspace connecting financial planners and freelance support services, which is really cool. Mel's also created a community group specifically for paraplanners called the Paraplanner Hub, and this is on Facebook. We always find lots of engagement, lots of collaboration with paraplanners, and heaps of support as well, which is great. And Mel has recently produced the Paraplanner Survey 2022, and we're going to talk through some of the insights from this fascinating survey. Welcome, Mel.
No worries, Danni. 2023, actually.
We're 2023 even, guys.
Yeah, that's all right.
It's nearly 2024.
I know, there we go. It's going so quick. So 2023, this is the third year that we've done it. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Danni. I'm really happy to be here. We've got the Paraplanner Hub. I did this 3 years ago. I started the first one. I felt like there was a lot of, talking in this industry about what paraplanners do, what they think, are they going to be here, what they want to do, all these sort of discussions, but no one really asked them. And I thought, I've got this community in the Paraplanner Hub. Why don't I just do a survey and find out, what do they want to do? What are their hopes and dreams? Do they want to be advisors? What is the average salary that paraplanners are on? So all those sort of questions I asked, and we've been doing it for 3 years now. And there have been some really interesting insights coming out of these surveys, which I'm sure we'll share a few today. But yeah, so the survey is completed by, I think it was like 100 in the first year now. We've got 210 people completing it, mostly Australian paraplanners, but we do have some overseas paraplanners completing it as well to give us some insights there. And also some nomads, people that just go on holidays and paraplan from wherever the world, which is quite interesting. But yeah, so.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. I love too that you did, it's captured so much information. Obviously a lot of your paraplanners love the Paraplanner Hub. It really is kind of a very supportive group for them. You've talked about the impact of AI as well in the survey, and we've sort of delved a little bit deeper into how paraplanners are feeling about that. Demographics, trends, even personality types. We've found, I think I can't remember the stat, most paraplanners are introverts.
Yeah, everyone always says this, paraplanners are introverts. They like to be in the background and do all the work, which I think is true too. But I thought, let's just make sure that that's accurate. And I think it was only 9% of paraplanners were actually pure extroverts. The rest were either a mix or pure introverts. I think it was like 43% were introverted. So it makes sense that these are the people that don't really want to sit in front of a client and, talk to people all the time. They just want to sit in the back and do their own thing. So it makes sense that this is a paraplanner.
Yeah.
Type.
Great role for working, I'm going to say working parents, working mothers and women especially. Obviously, I think also predominantly we've got females in the paraplanning career as well.
It is. Like the first year I did it, I was really surprised. I thought it'd be, I don't know why I thought, but I thought it'd be more of a blended mix, maybe 50-50, 60-40.
Yeah.
It was like 75% in the first year. It's about 71% this year are female. And then, so this year I sort of pondered, why is that the case? And I think you hit the nail on the head. And a lot of the feedback that we get, why do you want to be a paraplanner, continue to be a paraplanner instead of going to advising, is because of the flexibility, is because they don't have to have that stress of being an advisor and the sales pressure. And I can imagine that being, I've been a mother myself. You've got a young kid, maybe, under 10, and you have to work part-time, pick up the kids. And even though, we hate to say it is a woman's role, it traditionally is still in the realm of a mother's role to pick up the kids and do part-time work. I wish it wasn't, but it is. So I think women these days still love that flexibility of being a paraplanner and working from home. So that's interesting. And the other thing I considered, and I sort of mentioned this in the report, perhaps it's also, we see a lot of men in advising. It is a male-dominated profession still, much more so in the early 2000s when I was doing paraplanning as well. And I did find a lot of my male peers were progressing to advising much quicker. And I even got told from one of my bosses, it's because you're too good at admin. I'm like, gosh, because I could do things well, they like, I want to keep you here. And that happened a lot too. Yeah, exactly. So maybe it's a bit of a hangover from those years too, where there was more men going into the advising roles, and we had a lot of women making that career choice that, you know what, I'm happy to be a paraplanner. So maybe it's a bit left over from that as well, which makes sense. Because actually the other stat I saw, I thought, okay, how about the ones that do want to be advisors? Is it the same split, 70-30? No, it's a 50-50 split between the people that do want to become advisors of the male and female gender. So it is, I feel like, something that's hung over from previous years or maybe career decisions later in life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. All right. So I wanted to talk to you about the QAR noise that's going on. You know, we've had QAR, we've been talking for quite a while now. I think it's it's becoming a little bit contentious in terms of what's the SOA? Is the SOA really, you know, the bugbear? Is it really the strongest or biggest pain point in an advice business? And I think, you know, we sort of think about our clients at Finura. I always find that our clients are really struggling in the back office when it comes to implementation. We've got a health check and we've got the stats on that, and it's this really messy pie chart on how long it takes to implement advice, and it's anything from 1 to 60 days. 60, not 16,
Yep.
60 days. So that's insane. There's no consistency whatsoever around the implementation of advice. And you know, of course, the advice document, you know, there's a lot of stuff in our advice documents. There's a lot of regulatory requirements. I get that stripping that back is actually, you know, not such a bad thing. But what did you find in the survey, and how do you think paraplanners in particular are sort of feeling, because they're sort of hit with this, right? They're the ones that are probably most concerned about QAR and this specific piece of the specific recommendation that could potentially get through as one of the priorities that's being looked at. How's everyone feeling about this? What did you find in the survey?
Well, initially, I think if you were in the hub, you would have seen the people were quite alarmed to see that the SOA would be removed. And I can see how they'd be worried about that, because this is the main bit of work that they do day to day. I mean, the answers in the survey said that about, 95% of them write SOAs as part of their job. So most of them do SOAs. So if that was taken out and they didn't need to do SOAs, what do they do? And I think as time progressed and we really reflected on what does a paraplanner do, and we talked about it in the hub, they sort of come to the realization, well, I do a lot more than just writing an SOA. I do the research for the advisor. I help with the projections, because we all know that XTools Plus and other modeling software is quite complicated, and you really do need to know how to use it. There's a lot of paraplanners that still are learning how to use it. So they're the ones that do that complex computer work. There's other stuff they do, like ROAs, they do data entry. A lot of them do, 33% do project work inside an employed office. So I think there's a lot of work that they do which brings value. So their jobs are probably not going to be made redundant. Their jobs are probably going to evolve into something else. The other thing that we sort of considered is, well, is an advice document, if it's not given to a client, the work still needs to be done. The advisor's still going to have to develop the advice. There's still going to have to be some sort of compliance and licensing rules that need to be met in order to deliver the advice. There's still going to have to be some comparisons of product potential or working out what the outcomes of the advice is. So all that work still needs to be done, regardless if it's given to the client or not. It still needs to be done. And who's going to do that work? I'd love to say the advisors should do that work. They should do that work. Have they got the time to do that work? Probably not. There's a bigger demand for advice from Australians. They need to be seeing clients. So if that's still true, then I'm pretty confident that I'd see paraplanners still doing that work, even if it's not going to be provided to the client. And in saying that, I personally think that something does need to be given to the client, whether it's in a video format or even a 2-page summary of what the costs are, together with a nice PowerPoint document, something to give to the client to present the advice in a sort of digestible way to the client. I can't imagine an advisor sitting in front of a client for an hour just talking at them with the advice and them understanding what you're talking about. So I still feel there's going to be something given to the client, regardless if it's legislated or not. And if paraplanners will be the ones to help advisors with that. There's not enough admin people already. So I can still see that paraplanners may still take a lot of the lion's share of the admin work in office if there's not enough admin people as well. So there's a lot of stuff that paraplanners can do. So should you be worried as a paraplanner that you're going to lose your job? I don't think so. Is your role going to change? Probably. Is the tools that you're going to use changing? Probably. Will you be doing different SOAs? Most definitely. So I think that's why they're not too concerned about QAR. It's just another change in the industry, which I've been around since 2000. It's changed so much since then. I mean, we didn't even have SOAs back in 2000. They just started coming in, and I was a paraplanner back then. So, it's just an evolving industry, and it always will be. So nothing to be too concerned about. Yeah.
I think too, we haven't really spoken to any advisors or any of our clients that actually plan on ditching the SOA and just, keeping records of what they have done for the client, that they do see value in something tangible to give to the client. And, a lot of them have formed their value propositions around the advice document too, given the fact that it's been such a, big
thing.
burdensome document. So, I think to go from, you'd have to sort of rethink your entire value proposition if you were going to ditch the thing, I feel, as well.
I think so too. And I think we're probably going to talk about this a little bit later, but a lot of the cost burden has been placed on the SOA. That's why it's become such a big feature of the advice process. But reality, I think a lot of the advice process is not just in that document writing. I mean, if you look at how much it costs to write an SOA, an average is about $500, $600 based on the survey results. It's about 10% of the KPMG white paper that suggested it costs about $5,300 to generate advice. So the rest of it is really development, knowledge, probably education costs, admin, file noting, all that sort of stuff that you have to do in order to develop the advice. So we shouldn't put such a big impetus on that document we give to the client. We should just make it readable, digestible for that client. So I think we'll see that happening hopefully. Yeah, and I think it needs to be in a format that the clients can understand, and hopefully that's where it will go. So
yeah, absolutely. Which leads me to my next discussion point. One of the questions that you asked were, what are the main pain points with the SOA templates you use? And overwhelmingly, I think it was the top answer was editing takes too long, closely followed by not coded into software. So, I feel like paraplanners can have a really impactful conversation with the advice businesses that they're working with around technology and uplifting the way that advice documents are produced and the work that they do and how that is done. And I think one of the other things you talked about was the collation of the data. That's also another thing that takes paraplanners a long time, is actually getting the data, getting that fact find information, getting paraplanning request form, whatever it might be. That also is quite a strong pain point as well. And I'm pretty sure you said people are still doing handwritten notes when they're
yes. I was like, wow, I'll talk about the handwritten notes in a first. The editing takes too long. So the pain points of the SOA templates, obviously it does take a long time to generate SOA templates. And with Tanngo, obviously I see a lot of different templates coming through the system. I've seen beautifully coded templates in, let's say, software. I've seen Word documents, lots of Word documents coming through to paraplanners. Now, Word documents are just a template. The paraplanner's got to sit there and manually put in numbers into tables, do the copy and paste things into the SOA, copy and paste text into the SOA. It takes a long time. I've also seen templates that are poorly coded into software. So it'll come out, but the licensee says you've got to do all these manual workarounds to make it into a compliant document. All this makes it such a long process. So is the paraplanner to blame, or are we not really addressing the issue, which is probably the SOA templates are too long? Is that a legislation issue, or is it a licensee issue? I could argue both ways. Is it not coded into software? I don't know. The amount of money that you'd spend to get it coded into software, spend 10 grand or whatever it may be to do that, and then have the efficiencies in your SOA production time, it would be such a win for your business. But yet I very rarely see a very well coded SOA. It needs to be done. And the other thing which holds up SOA writing is formatting. I know some advisors really love a beautifully formatted document, but I've seen some advisors really go down to nth degree to have different colors on this and that, and it just takes time to edit. So I think just consider, if you've got a paraplanner and it is taking a long time, just consider, is the template properly coded? Is it written well? Is there a lot of workarounds that the paraplanner has to do? All these things you can improve to make your SOA writing process a bit easier. The other thing we talked about is not having all the information at the start. So this is what, say the SOA is beautifully coded. I've seen this data issue is a big issue. I've seen a file note with some data in it. provided with a fact find that's got different data in it, provided with the paraplanning request, which has got different data in it. And it might be just slight data differences. The home loan's 183,200 in the fact find. It's 180,000 in the file note, and we've got a bank statement that's got it 176,000. So it might be just slight differences, but when you're going down and putting information into modeling and you assume it's one figure, then you go back to the advisor and they go, no, I have to change it because that's the wrong figure, should have been 183. This causes delays. So my point with maybe making this is a bit better is have one source of truth, reference the source of truth in your file note and your paraplanning request, and don't provide multiple points of data. That's probably one thing that I see a lot. And the other thing that we see is just not having the information at all. So this is if we're making contributions advice and we have no idea if the client's made previous contributions. So this information just delays, and we have to go back to the advisor and ask a question. Then they may have to go back to the client and ask a question, just causes delays. So questions is like, if you're giving advice, maybe when you put the paraplanning request form, make sure you've got tick boxes to see what information do you have to give to the paraplanner for this advice, or have you got that information? Make sure the fact find is actually capturing the right data and doesn't capture superfluous data. I've seen lots of fact finds with half the fact find's not completed because they never collect that data ever. So maybe review your fact find and make sure you're just collecting the information you actually use and need. So I think that would solve a lot of issues. And, you know, should the paraplanner be data cleansing? Maybe, if that's what you want to do in your business process, but be prepared for higher paraplanning costs because they're going to spend an hour or maybe more sifting through all the data, trying to work out which data is accurate. So that just takes time. So maybe, and you could probably talk in this, Danni, a bit more about how do we, as an industry, be better at capturing that data and using a single source of truth. I think that's probably one of the biggest things. I've said it a lot, that data is the issue here, not the paraplanners or the SOA templates. We've got a data issue. So I think that's something we've got to really resolve in our industry. And it is using technology, I think, and having a source of truth. And not
so
having...
do you think...
Not having handwritten bloody... oh, sorry, fact find. I put this in because it was one of my colleagues said, "Oh, how many fact finds do you get that are handwritten?" And I said, "Oh, probably not that many. I don't know. Maybe I should ask a question in the survey. Why is it a data issue?" And 30% say they get handwritten notes or fact finds. And I thought, we have still advisors that are writing fact finds, which is fair enough. I can imagine it. They're in a meeting and they want to write it down because it's easier for them to take notes. But then they're supplying that to the paraplanner who can't read the information, or someone else is retyping that into data. It's just, I think in 2023, if we're talking about AI, we really should not have any handwritten data if we want to go to AI. If we've still got handwritten data, we need to take a step back and go, let's fix this data issue first. Then we can talk about AI, because AI is not going to work if you have handwritten notes. I can tell you that much. So,
absolutely. There's a lot of foundational stuff we need to fix first before we start worrying about AI, I feel, in our industry. And I think from, collecting the fact find, we've still got, I think we're around 40% of advice businesses using client portals. So it is actually going up, that figure, which is good to see. But we've still got the bulk of the industry not using client portals. And that's a really excellent way of helping with that fact finding process, right? So you can send it to the client. You can, even assuming that the client may only fill in a portion of that, that's fine. At least they're sort of getting prepped for the meeting, and the advisor only has a little bit of work to do in that meeting to complete that fact find. And I think it's just all about your processes, right? It's all about incorporating something into your workflow that is going to support this whole advice production workflow, whatever you want to call it. And that's getting the client onboarded appropriately, getting that data in, like you say, appropriately, and then pushing that to the Paraplanner. I think that would save, like you say, that's going to save heaps of time and get people focusing on more value-added stuff. And we definitely should be doing handwritten notes. I think we were going to talk about, actually the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was the future of paraplanning. Because just under half of the respondents, I think, said technology and AI is the biggest threat to paraplanning. And I do validate this as a concern. I think it's a concern for everybody. There's so much hype and noise out there about AI. We're seeing products now being thrown at us that are AI products. We're hearing about robotic process automation, all that sort of stuff. But to your to the point of this whole conversation, we're still getting 30% of advisors writing handwriting stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
So and not sort of having not really having a defined process in place, because that kind of tells me that there's not a process happening potentially in that business, a process that has good businesses. A business that has good processes probably would have a bit more of a streamlined way of delivering that information to a paraplanner, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So should we be worried about AI?
AI?
Oh, is it going to take over?
I
What do you
think
reckon?
I always thought AI is going to be a fantastic tool to support paraplanners. I mean, gosh, I use it now. I like AI. There's lots of software, even not in the financial planning realm, that we use AI for. I'm thinking this is great. It's fantastic. But it's not eradicating things completely. I think if we look to the future, in the immediate future, 5 years, I don't see it changing too much in our industry. Maybe in 10 years, I think it's going to help us write a bit better. It's going to help us identify things a bit easier, perhaps, especially with our strategies and some calculations. But inherently, I think advice is a very grey area. It's got a human element we can't, discount it, that human emotion plays a big part in financial decisions. And I think we need to not rely and think that AI, which is usually a black and white or very distinctive algorithm that you have to put in, and it comes and you put the the data in, and it says this is the best way forward, and it'll give you some responses. I personally think clients may not always do the best thing for them. They'll do something based on their emotion. So I think financial planning will always have that grey area that will need a human interaction or decision-making skill for. Like with doctors, same thing. And we have doctors and we have nurses. Doctors are there at the forefront making all the decisions, and we've got the nurses there caring for the patients and, so forth. So we still have that, binary two-person relationship even in the medical world. So I think that's going to be the same in the future for financial planning as well. We have the advice, we have the paraplanners, and we have AI and technology supporting that relationship. So I'm very excited to see what it will, eventuate with technology. Anything to make we are so inefficient in our industry. So I welcome with open arms any technology that's going to make us more efficient. Considering we have 40 hours in a week, and some planners are maybe seeing 1 to 2, maybe 3 clients a week, really is not enough for our industry. We need to be seeing more clients, and we need to give more advice, and we need to be giving more, short form advice and things like that. We need to be able to use technology to do that. So, I'm happy for it, but I don't think it's going to replace any roles in the near future. And you know what? If technology can replace a paraplanner, I'm sorry, but they'll be able to replace an advisor as well, because everything that a paraplanner does is the calculations for advice. So if we can press a button and give advice that a paraplanner would usually do, then I'm sorry, the advisor's probably now redundant as well. And I don't think that's going to.
Yeah, I agree. We sort of talk here too about, there's been some stuff out there around advisor avatars and the avatars actually delivering the advice. And we sort of talk about the ethical side of AI as well. And, we don't really have any guidelines at the moment on how to use AI appropriately in our businesses. But I'll ask you this question. Would you want to know if your advice was being delivered by an avatar or a human? Would you actually want to know that, or would you care?
I'm good. Kind of. I love the thinking. People are going out there. How can we use technology? I don't think having a person talk to you is the issue in our industry. I don't think people are going, oh God, I wish I had technology so I don't have to talk to Joe Bloggs, my advisor. Why are we solving that problem? I don't think having the time to talk to a client is not the issue that we should be solving with the AI. And yet we're having things where we go, oh, you don't have to talk to your clients anymore. You've got a computer talking to. I personally wouldn't want an AI person talking to me. I want to speak to a human. That was a very interesting path for me for AI, trying to solve that issue. I think we more need to solve the efficiencies with process rather than the human interactions. I think we still need those human interactions. So it was interesting to see. Maybe it might be better place for the more industry funds where we're having mass market advice being presented and you have a human
Mhm.
talking through something on a screen, perhaps, where you've got imagery. But to have a person just talking at you using AI, I think is a very interesting use of that technology. Um,
Mhm.
I'm just going to go to a personal anecdote. I had an issue with one of the programs that I use, and it was a very simple question, I thought. I went onto their chatbot and I got, an AI person talking to me trying to answer my question. And I just didn't get the nuance of the question I was asking. And I was so fed up. And I was like, I just want to talk to a human so they can understand the nuance of what I was talking about, because you're giving me slightly the wrong answer. And I just thought, imagine if I was a person trying to ask a computer about my financial situation, which is probably very nuanced and got a lot of emotion behind it. And it was giving me these weird responses that didn't quite answer it. I'd be so fed up. So I think we do need
Yeah.
that human interaction to understand that human nuances that really a computer won't pick up, that body language, everything like that, if you're just typing something or talking to a computer. So as much as I love the technology and I saw it and I thought, wow, this is really interesting, I just think it's probably a bit of a diversion from what we should be using AI for. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
my,
I think that, yeah, really, really good points.
yeah,
I totally agree.
yeah,
And we do have a lot of other problems to solve before we get to that point. And
yeah,
we sort of always talk about just do the boring stuff first,
yeah,
get the boring stuff done, and then play around with
totally.
AI. Because I also find, with if I'm using ChatGPT, like you say, you really have to know how to ask it the question.
Yeah,
It's not going to read your mind. It's like
no,
I have an answer that I think I need. Tell me what it is. You've got
yeah.
to ask it. It it's like talking to a human at the end of the day who may not have all the answers.
Oh,
And
I
it's
went on.
opinionated. And
It is. I go on. I don't know if you've been on it. I'm going to give you a Facebook group. It's called Mums on a Budget, and I went in there just to see what the everyday mum was asking people on financial advice. And my God, I was horrified. I had to leave the group because I thought, oh my goodness, this is really bad. But the
don't comment. Don't comment.
no, I know I couldn't. I was like, I couldn't stop. It was like I had to delete myself. But the questions they were asking the wrong question. So they were asking about salary sacrifice, but they were calling it something else like salary packaging, or they're using the wrong terminology and getting the wrong answers.
Uh,
But I could tell by the way they were asking it, in the context they were asking it, what they were actually wanting to ask. And I was thinking as I was reading this, imagine a person who has no idea about finance going in there asking a question wrong, getting the wrong answers, and then acting on that wrong because the computer didn't actually know that it was trying to ask this question instead of that question. They're the sort of
mhm.
things and issues we need to consider if we're going to go down this path of humans who don't understand advice, asking questions to get solutions for themselves. I think we can't
Yeah.
discount the fact that humans need to be there to actually, oh, actually, I know what you're trying to ask, and this is what is this what you mean? Not that. Oh, yes, I do mean that. So I think that's such an
Hmm.
important aspect to financial advice, understanding what the human
Yeah.
actually wants. So yeah,
Definitely.
that's my view on AI and advice.
Yeah. Excellent. We've ticked that box. All right. We've solved all the problems in the world. Um,
Ugh,
Actually, one thing I just wanted to just reminded me, not AI related, but the survey showed that 58% of paraplanners state that they have influence on product
oh yeah,
advice and 88% on strategic advice, which, sort of talks more to the point on how valuable the paraplanner actually is to
yeah.
advisors. If they're actually if they've got that influence, if the advisors are really sort of trusting the paraplanner to really obviously understand the client and the client situation, and then obviously what's going to be the most appropriate recommendations. I found that really interesting.
And I wasn't actually surprised with the strategy one. I'll tell you why, and it comes down to the advisor says, I think that this strategy is going to work for this client. And then as a paraplanner, you go into the software and you would model it out, and then you realize that the client's not going to meet their goals in 20 years' time. I mean, an advisor can't do that in their head. So then you would just fiddle around and go, oh, but hey, if they put maybe, $1,000 a month more into they're super, they're actually going to meet their goals. So you get to fiddle around with it. So that's the influence I think they have. And there's also, as a paraplanner, and I can attest to this, when you're neck deep in paraplanning and you're looking at technical stuff and referencing it and writing it all the time, you get to know all the details of different strategies quite well. As soon as I left, I was like, oh, I've forgotten everything. But you do remember stuff more easily. You're understanding technical strategies and how they link together because you can see it because you're doing the modeling. So if the advisor hasn't picked something up, which is totally understandable because they're just sitting there doing all the stuff they need to do, the paraplanner can be there go, oh, did you forget that, you can't put, you do catch-up contributions if you have over 500 grand. Oh, I forgot about that. So it's those sort of things that the paraplanner is really good for influencing, and probably just not influencing, but is that the right word? You know what I mean? Helping the advisor co-develop that advice. The product one I thought was interesting. So 54% in this year's survey was influence of product device. And I was thinking, what could this be? And it's probably around when you do asset allocation tables and you're comparing against the benchmark and things like that, and the asset allocation's out of whack. So then you go back to the advisor and go, look, you're a bit overweight in international equities, and then they'll rejig it. So maybe things like that. Or another example is when you do the product comparisons and the fees are too expensive for the product they recommended. Then you go back to the advisor and then rejig the advice. So those are the ways in which I think paraplanners do help influence the advice that the advisor's providing. So without that, the advisor is going to have to do all that analysis themselves, and that's fine, but it just takes time, and they have to learn how to do the software, which is also just something that just slows down the advice process. So they can't see existing clients, they're doing that research. So I think that's another important aspect of why paraplanners are there to support the advisors. They've got the skills, they've got the knowledge to help come back with those suggestions. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. And that is really interesting. And there was also something around training and professional development for paraplanners as well, and a desire to sort of uplift the kind of training that they're getting, and even in software as well. I think that was one of the questions, that they wanted more software training.
Yeah, I was going to use a wrong word there. They're really hungry for it. It's probably a better word. A lot of them, because especially I'm going to say the contract paraplanners, employed paraplanners, if they're only exposed to one software in their business, they leave that business and then they're looking at how do I get trained up in this other software? Because really they are the software experts in their business when it comes to financial planning software. Some of them even do configuration. There was a fair few that were doing configuration in the office. So they are the experts of that software. And I think there's not enough training given to paraplanners on the different types of software. A lot of them do know Xplan very well, but there's a whole raft of other technology groups coming in that I think do want to make an impact on the industry. But the issue that we have is an advisor switches to this new software and then they've got no paraplanners to do the work because no one knows how to use the software. So there's this, and then they go back to Xplan. So it's great for Xplan, but I think if those new financial planning software companies want to make an impact, they've got to go to the people that are using it, the paraplanners, give them free training, make sure they've got a cohort of paraplanners that can use the software to help and support the advisors that are using their new software, just so the advisors don't have to sit there and go, I've got no support to use this software. I don't know how to use the software. I'm never going to learn how to use this software. I find it too hard. They're going to go back. So this is a message out to all those software providers, and some of them just, you can't get to access to training unless you've got a license. To me, that's madness. I think if you want people to use your software, make the training accessible to those who want to use it or should be using it and may not have a license, but will support someone who has got a license. So that's another bugbear of mine. Yeah.
That's a really good point, actually, because you do need to be a paid user to get access to the training, and the training modules will demonstrate what the software can actually do. And if we're wanting to change or do something different, you're right. We should make that
or give a training license or something like that, where they can get access to the training. If you don't want to make it completely public, let the paraplanner say, I'm a paraplanner, I need access to training. Give them access to the training. It's a real, and some, I'm going to say some software providers have opened their eyes to that and are giving access to paraplanners, but some of them still don't. And it is a problem. And I'd love to see more paraplanners get expertise in different software. It's really something we need to do as an industry to help that competition, and just to make sure that there's different software available for different businesses that can afford different levels of software. So that's
great. Excellent. Well, I could talk to you about this all day. There's so many interesting insights in this survey. They kind of like really speak to a lot of industry issues that are going on. So I think it's amazing. Thanks for doing the survey and for thinking of thinking of paraplanners. We've got so many surveys and reports in our industry, but none of them sort of really, I haven't seen any others that sort of really hone in
Yeah.
and target the paraplanner, what they're doing, even down to their personality types and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's great work. It was awesome.
Thank
We have always one additional question that we like to ask our guests. And do you have any practical tips for anybody in the advice industry, paraplanners, advisors, advice businesses?
Yeah, for sure. So this is something I've just been doing of late, which I can't believe I didn't do before, which is that issue where we have data or questions about the paraplanning request or what I need to get out of the advisor before I start an SOA. And I've been doing of late, typing up all the information that I think the advice needs to be based on. So we'll say a scope of work, and then I'll have a column in this document to say questions, decisions, et cetera, make this a shared document. And then me and the advisor would work together on this shared document to answer those questions, get the right information, and sign off on this document. I even paste calculations in there sometimes just to talk about them with the advisor. That becomes a record of the process that me and the advisor went through to develop the advice. It's also shared, so it's immediate. I can see the responses quite quickly, and it's just my record of what needs to be done when I start the SOA. And the other thing is that we're not emailing each other. So instead of going back and forth over email, which is inherently bad because you're losing information, you're sending information over email, which is awful anyway. But it's all in the one place. So, I mean, if you use Tanngo, that's different. We've got a chat thing, but I think that's a really good start. If you want to improve the way you give information to your paraplanner and discuss and make decisions, open up a shared Word document or Google document or something like that and use that as your living paraplanning request / development document for advice. I think if you try that, give it a go, you'll probably find that it'll work beautifully as it does for me.
I love it. I love it. And, you know, what if, guys, you've already got that technology, probably most of you do, in your Microsoft suite of products, and that's in SharePoint. I think this is what you're referring to, right? Having a
shared Word document
that you're collaborating on.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's secure as well. Cyber security, and we should not be emailing this kind of personal information back and forth. Let's do it in a password protected, it's more secure way.
Or in a Teams chat, no Teams chat. Yeah, definitely.
That's right. Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on today as our guest, Mel. It's been awesome to have you here.
No problem.
And thanks to everybody for listening to another episode of the WealthTech Insider. If you haven't already, you can complete our technology health check. You can find that at www.paneragroup.com, and we'll see you next time.